Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another fine episode of the Hell Money Podcast. We are coming to you live from beautiful Nashville, Tennessee, from an undisclosed location. Actually, not
we
really.
Just disclosed it.
We can disclose it. We're at the View, where the Inscribing Nashville event is going to take place. I am, as always, joined by my lovely co-host, Aaron Boop. And today we have a very special guest. We have Charlie Spears of various projects, various endeavors.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Lately, I've been saying Charlie Spears with Blockspace Media, so that's my new moniker.
Good.
That's
Yeah.
right. Blockspace Media recently attempted a hostile takeover of the Hell Money Podcast media empire. We were barely able to fend it off and remain an independent entity, but that might change in the future.
We can table that. You know, this is funny because I developed my first parasocial relationship with you guys watching this podcast.
That's right.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
I love that. Honestly, a couple people have asked me if I dislike parasocial relationships that have formed from the podcast.
She loves having
I literally love them. Like,
Yeah.
I love having parasocial relationships, and I love people being parasocial to me. Because I think I've never had a bad experience from it. Like, if in every single case, it's always like someone
We're really tempting fate here. You know?
I know we are. But like in every case, okay, sometimes there's things people get wrong about me, or they like assume something, or they think my zodiac sign is different than what it is.
It's a huge mistake.
Huge mistake. But like for the most part, it's just people know me better than they would otherwise, and so they come to me talking about astrology or Bitcoin or whatever. Like they know what to talk to me about. It's the best. So I don't know. Have you had any parasocial experiences yet with your podcast, or is Bitcoin season 2 not quite at the parasocial level yet?
I say this with love to all the DJs out there who flood my DMs, but I really do try my absolute best to try to give everyone their attention and to respond to the the flood of questions all the time. But a lot of these people I've never met. I can't do all like the due diligence about like our private communication, and I don't know a lot of the people on the other side of the keyboard. I do love all these people out there, but I feel like I have this not like this written parasocial relationship where people see my writings online, but
Yeah,
I have yet
true.
to like experience someone coming up to me cold and like jumping right into familiar relationship.
Knowing you.
Yeah.
How different are we from the parasocial like relationship that you had with us?
Wow. Okay. Hell Money Podcast, everybody. You guys are pretty similar, actually.
I think so too.
You're actually. I think the other thing is, you're never supposed to meet your heroes, so don't worry, you guys aren't my heroes. but you're even more fun in person, and
Wow.
yeah. So I like you guys on and off air.
We didn't disappoint yet.
He's forced to say this because we're recording.
Yeah.
Hell Money is taking a hostile takeover of
Yeah.
Blockspace Media.
Yeah, we have the Hell Money. This is actually the hostile Hell Money takeover of the Blockspace Media War Room at Inscribing Nashville. That's,
Yeah.
I think, the best way to put it.
Yeah, correct.
But you're doing, so I mean, we're in like a side conference room at the venue where we're having Inscribing Nashville. Blockspace Media is our official media partner. What are you doing? I actually don't even know. Like,
That's
I just
it,
was
yeah.
like, Charlie, I trust him. Like, go for it. But I don't even know what you're planning on doing tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm doing this. I'm doing a bunch of these with the people who are off this, on your stage. Just not with an audience. Gonna record it, a little more casual. You know how it is. People can get more comfortable around a table and more of a podcast setting. And then we'll package some of this on my particular podcast under Blockspace, Bitcoin Season 2. And then we'll probably take clips and we'll see. What I'd like to do is just get a quicker turnaround for Inscribing Nashville, Inscribing Atlantis for a lot of the content, because it took 6 months last time to get the talks from Amsterdam.
You know what was so fucked about so we had the panels from Amsterdam, we had the video, and then we had separate audio recording. And I don't really know enough about how video and audio recordings work to understand why this happened. But I think it's like something about like the frame rate, or like
the frame rate was marginally off between the audio and the video, so they desynced over time.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So they
It was
desynced
like
over 8
an
hours.
interval rate.
Yeah. So like much love to Bad Puffy Cheetos, Jason, for going through that for me, because I was like, I don't fucking know how to
Damn, in
deal
that
with
case,
this.
I rescind my offer to edit those for you, I don't want to deal with that.
No, that was atrocious.
Shout out Bad Puppy Cheetah.
But yeah, so we're gonna have faster turnaround. Professional media people on it, of course. Can you tell us a little bit about? Actually, I was gonna say I want you to tell us about Blockspace Media, which is when did you start it? It's new, right?
So I say my partner Will Foxley, he's the founder, and I'm the co-founder. So Will ran all the media for Compass Mining.
Mm-hmm.
He built
mining. Okay, Compass Mining of
the
infamy.
Infamous. So Will weathered the storm through the chaos because
for people who don't know, what happened to Compass Mining?
A series of misfortunate events. It had to do. I don't really know what I can say, but publicly, there was a lot of failed executions of plugging in machines.
Right, which is the core competency of a miner, and the public stories that they didn't pay some hosting provider.
I'll actually come out a little bit on Compass's side for that one. I think there are better criticisms, which is just they weren't able to execute on the timeline, and. But that one actually was because if you roll the clock back, this is 2021, peak COVID infrastructure supply chain. Everybody and their dog is going from a garage Bitcoin mine to a 10 megawatt Bitcoin mine, the real big boy stuff. So a lot of hosting providers, the Compasses of the world, set up deals with the infrastructure people. And when it took more than 30 days to get your transformers or your switch gears, and it instead took 6 months, that's when a lot of the money and timelines broke down. So you had a lot of situations like this Compass deal, of which that's just one of the more prominent, salient ones.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a typical story of late 21 and 22. But I don't want to dwell on that because that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to get out of the mining business, because it's just this, you just get curb stomped every day. But my partner Will spun up the research and media side. So he built the mining pod, which is the kind of public-facing side of Compass, and ended up running a lot of comms for them during this crisis management while not having any of the operations side. So Will went independent about a year ago.
I just saw he tweeted yesterday saying it was the 1 year anniversary of him being self-employed.
Yeah, and spun, put his money together, scrambled to continue on the production of the media that he was doing, realized he needed some more people. I'm one of those people. As of yesterday, which is Monday, we can say we now have a third full-time guy on the team, who's Colin Harper, former head of research for Luxer.
Nice.
So really proud about that. So it's now Will, Charlie, and Colin. And so I joined Will in March officially. I'd been on his podcast for a long time because before I even met you guys, I was the token Oklahoma independent Bitcoin mining guy. I had some off-grid stuff, some on-grid Bitcoin mines, kind of self-produced, got a couple partners in Oklahoma. So I'd be I got a lot of opinions too. So he would bring me on his podcast. I talk about Oklahoma, I talk about oil and gas. And so we developed a rapport. So now modern Blockspace Media is positioned as an independent B2B Bitcoin media company. If you look across the landscape of crypto media, it's owned by a large DCG type group.
What is DCG?
Digital Currency Group, the Barry Silbert.
Okay.
And CoinDesk.
Yeah.
Bullish. But again, large venture companies. Bitcoin Mag's great, but it's a part of a B2C media. So it's a larger entity. We're keeping it more tight, independent. We're tenured in the mining space. And then there's other crypto media, the Blockworks and CoinDesks of the world, who are they're not really familiar with Bitcoin. You listen to these guys talk about Bitcoin, they have no clue how to talk about it. And they're focused on DeFi. And that's fine, but the future of a lot of the interesting stuff happening in our ecosystem is happening on Bitcoin, and nobody's got equipped to talk about it. So we are doing a conference here at the Fidelity office in November in Boston.
Oh, in Boston. Okay.
In Boston. That's checked. By the time this comes out, we will have announced it.
Nice. Breaking news.
Yeah.
on your favorite independent media source, except for Blockspace Media.
It's called Op Next, and it's a little bit of the BTC++ devs, a little bit of the consensus money, a little bit of the mining disrupt miner presence, all wrapped together for the purpose of talking about how to move Bitcoin forwards.
Mm-hmm.
So Op Next, a little bit of the scaling Bitcoin without as much focus on the academia, but we want to, I miss that type of conference beat in the cyclical, narrative of Bitcoin. So we're doing that. And we also have the Gwart show, the mining pod.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple other shows that may come out by the time this airs. So
gosh,
that was a long. I should get better at explaining what Blockspace is.
No, that's pretty good. I mean, so I guess I'm curious. I have many questions. Let's continue on the Blockspace Media thread here. So you guys have all these podcasts now. You're doing in-person media. Is the idea that you're kind of just spread all over the place and you're because I mean, if you look at something like CoinDesk, I mean, obviously that's much bigger, not independent, whatever, but they have podcasts, they have consensus, they have their articles, whatever. Are you trying to basically be full spectrum, or do you have a focus that you...
I'm definitely on the spectrum. That's
right.
Actually think about it like this, a less annoying Bankless. Imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
So you have some kind of tenured personalities in the space who have maybe a venture arm, a community angle, and a conference, and then a suite of media products. But keep it tight, independent. Will and I make the decisions. We will announce a raise here very soon. But again, that's limited what our angels and investors can say, because we have them in a safe. They're over here. We have our independent voice. So there's not a lot of, I would say, people who can report on things, especially in Bitcoin, with a more neutral, transparent tone.
Except How Money podcast.
Exactly, because you guys are independent.
But we don't know anything. That's the problem. Well, you know a lot about Bitcoin,
Yeah, you do.
But in terms of our ecosystem opinions, it's just off the dome. We're not
That's
necessarily
kinda what I
doing.
do, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you're doing more you deep dive. You're the person that if
It's
I'm
how I got
trying
into
to.
ordinals.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's a great follow up. But
Great
I feel
segue.
Yeah, I do want to ask you about that, but it's anytime that there's any sort of new project or thing, you're the person that I ask because you've already looked into it. So you are a deep diver, and I think that's a little we're vibes level analysis. You're more hard hitting.
I'm the kind of guy who if I have to, I can stumble through a white paper. I just like new ideas. I like fresh ideas. That's why ordinals was so interesting.
I was gonna say, how did you get into ordinals?
Well, I feel let's roll back further.
Right.
Let's start at the beginning of the Charlie Spears story.
Yeah.
And go forward.
Statute of limitations is long. I got into it to buy drugs.
Yeah. So is that how you got into Bitcoin? Was to buy drugs?
Yeah.
Nice.
And that's
Very
how
cool.
my wife and my yet to be wife at the time and I would take ecstasy at music festivals.
Okay.
That's cute.
Fucking ruled.
And how did you learn about
The internet.
Yeah, well, so it was the Silk Road that you were buying from.
Yeah, and so that's why I donated a lot to Ross Ulbricht.
How did you learn about the Silk Road?
I don't know, man. The internet.
I mean,
That was 2012, 2013. So either Reddit, which then took me to Bitcoin Talk, which then, and then the dark years of 14, 15, 16, I would spend time on Reddit. Then after the block size wars, left Reddit because it was useless.
I don't think people remember, but Reddit used to actually be very high signal.
Yeah.
The Bitcoin subreddit used to be great. I was on there all the time.
Yeah.
That's one of the primary places that I learned about Bitcoin
Same.
initially. And then it just got fucking useless.
Block size war just did a number on it.
Yep.
what about making content? Were you streaming or making videos or anything like that before?
My original career path 15 years ago was to do local news broadcasting. I worked for the local NPR affiliate doing local news.
Damn.
That's so
And
funny.
then I left because it wasn't enough money. Radio's a dying career.
Yeah.
And I went into oil and gas data analytics. My family has a market research firm in oil and gas. I tried to work for them, didn't work. Started an independent but parallel company that I built over about a decade.
And this was
Called Oilfield Logics, and it's where we started digitizing information about how we drill wells, and I captured it and sold it.
okay.
Nice. Nice.
And then what was your first like Bitcoin venture that you like?
Mining. I bought a bunch of Haylong Dragon Mint T1s at the top of 2017 and took a haircut on those. Bought S9s on the way down, kept hooking them up. Found a warehouse of like a buddy of mine. Totally miscalculated the power bill. Gave a bunch of Bitcoin in 2020 to make up for it. Moved, added a couple partners, threw down some shipping containers in rural Oklahoma. Was able to get more money to build some GPUs in those shipping containers. Built a very, very large GPU mine. Spun a lot of that out into off-grid and on-grid Bitcoin mining, which was always my intention. And so, yeah, Nakamoto is the modern version of that. So Satoshi Nakamoto's motor, which is Bitcoin mining. Nakamoto.
You are on the spectrum, huh?
Yeah. And so if you want to watch, there's a Peter McCormack episode called Thank You, Elizabeth Warren, from spring of 23, and it showcases one of our sites. So you can go see like a pump jack and like next to our containers, and Peter McCormack wearing not steel-toed shoes, but rather like cool Nikes and getting them totally
nice,
totally muddy. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, so there's several things that have come together in terms of your threads that have led you to here.
Dude, I think I'm just like Casey. I just like spend all day thinking about this, and I follow weird rabbit holes.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's interesting, that's what occupies most of my time. That's why I think I'm destined to become a podcaster. Like, I've paid my dues trying to actually operate, and it's not fun. It fucking sucks. It sucks to try to like actually work and build in the space. I'd much rather talk about it. So
many such cases.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how just ultimately chaotic mining seems to be, given how simple it is,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you need electricity. Electricity just comes over some wires, right? You need to order some boxes and plug them in. Yet it seems to be this continual like shit show, like gift that keeps on giving with drama. Why is mining fundamentally so chaotic and so fucked up?
You know how hard it is to convince like your friends who've known you for forever to buy just a little Bitcoin?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine trying to get someone to sign on like their non-Bitcoin related business into long-term, deeply complex contracts that ultimately rely on the price of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what Bitcoin mining is. And you're doing it in ways that the counterparty has never seen before. And it scales the counterparty does not have language or contract structure to work with. As far as the volatility of it, it actually mirrors oil and gas. Oil and gas is cyclical up and down. You just have just as much or even more like goofy, scammy, wonky behavior. It's just over more of a 8-year to 10-year cycle in American oil and gas. And so there's huge analogy there. American oil and gas and Bitcoin mining. I like to say Bitcoin mining is almost exactly like the oil patch, except it's just compressed as a timeline.
So like accelerated wackiness timeline.
Exactly.
Yep. And so what came after Nakamoto?
So I still operate Nakamoto. We have a couple sites in Oklahoma, off and on grid. Honestly, tired of operating this, and
if you want to buy some mining operations.
Well, so like all my time is spent now in this new world of Bitcoin.
Bitcoin season 2.
Bitcoin season 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm owning this name. I know it's not the perfect name, but it's such a good catchphrase.
I think it's great.
Because it feels different.
Yeah. I'm claiming, I am absolutely positive that I'm wrong on this, but How Many Podcasts season 2 happened. And then I feel like Bitcoin season 2 as a phrase. And I was like, we might have done something with that video under the overpass. You know what I mean? We might have instigated a little bit.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're all under the umbrella of Bitcoin season 2.
Yeah. I think it's got a lot of mimetic energy behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Blockspace, we have some podcasts. We are gonna do things which normal media companies do. We're just one of the only media companies of our type in this category: Bitcoin, mining focus, Bitcoin tech, and independent. Those are kind of the umbrella.
So then is your target audience essentially people in Bitcoin? Like it's educated Bitcoiners or people that already know something about Bitcoin.
A little bit. It's we're trying to anticipate who the next giant onboarding group is going to be, and it's going to happen. You can see it right now. It's happening everywhere else. It's not the same 10,000 people on Bitcoin Twitter who have a very narrow, myopic view about what you can and can't do as a Bitcoiner. Our target is this next wave. Businesses, more money into mining, people who spend a lot of time in crypto and don't really know who the Preston Pishes and the Saifedeans of the world are.
Sure. But
they come in through ordinals and they know things they know buzzwords like DeFi and tokenization, but so like they're familiar with that. But I and kind of a lot of our positioning is like, we talk about those things. We will engage those things. You won't find other Bitcoin podcasts even referencing Solana or Ethereum when we do this regularly. And I think this is what the new personality of Bitcoiner is not as like narrow in the topics that you can talk about. I think it allows a little more intellectual honesty. Because a lot of Bitcoiners just don't understand anything outside Bitcoin. And I think it's hamstringing us.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I mean, I think a lot of Bitcoiners view crypto outside of Bitcoin as the enemy. And if you don't know your enemy, then like you're going to flop, And I mean, I think even you can look at ordinals that way, because I think ordinals is very much contained in Bitcoin, right? But that's not the way that they would see it because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
How did you get into ordinals? Like, how did that happen? Because you were there, like, you might have been like patient zero or like very close in terms of...
I think Casey said it's like I was the harbinger of this wave of people.
So yeah, like the way I only vaguely remember this. I had created an ordinals Discord a long time ago, like back when nobody cared, right? And it was literally like
10 people.
Yeah, 10 people, maybe even less on the Discord. And then Charlie was there, like super, super early. And then I think I don't remember the first time we really started talking, but I remember when things started blowing up and we were like, all right, we need a moderator, somebody needs to be a moderator. And then Charlie was like, I'll do it. And I was like, okay, well, I've seen Charlie around. He's not just like a new scammer. Like he had like a monkey with like a little mining hat.
Solana NFT.
Solana NFT.
Because I'm plugged in.
Yeah, right. You're code switching.
Yes, a lot.
Yeah. And we were like, all right, let's give him admin, why not? That was like, that's my memory. Yeah. And then that's when like the Ordicord like fire hose started.
Yeah.
That's how it is. The way I came about it is I had encountered a Hell Money podcast or two back in the fall because it was fresh. But I filed it over here. And then that was the bottom of FTX. Like FTX sentiment bottom. I was like, I need to take a couple months break. My wife Lauren and I were just like, we're gonna play video games for a month or two. So I was very online on Discord, and I threw some Hell Money pods in the back, and I think I saw Dennis Porteau's write up.
Yep.
I was like, okay, I actually need to this is interesting. So hop in the Discord, ask Casey about Sats and Bitcoin, not epochs, but what every 6 halvings is a
cycle, a conjunction.
Yeah. So that was the first thing I was like, oh, I've never heard that before. Why is nobody? And yeah, I'm like a super terminally online guy, so Discord made sense. You deputized me, then I deputized my friends and some other random people in the ecosystem who, thank God, pretty much turned out to be like great people. The Pazes, the Post Capones of the world, the Satoshis of the world.
The Discord would have fallen apart.
I can't even
Charlie.
Imagine if you and Lolo had not been there.
Yeah, would have just self-destructed completely.
I felt like a battle mage. There was this time in late February that where there was a multi-week period where at about 11 p.m. Central, Lauren and I called it the witching hour.
Yeah, right.
Where we learned
the
there
most retardio bullshit.
the retardation began to feed off each other.
Yeah.
And there was no way.
It's a critical mass. I mean, it comes to like you have one retard, they send a retarded message, like that's okay. You got like 3-4 retards. One of them sends a retarded message, the other one sends a retarded message back, and then it's just like it's all over.
Yeah. And so there were a few nights and we were like, oh, it's time to crack a beer and watch.
What was were there any like highlights of like hijinks on the Ordicord?
There's online drama all the time. I try my best to insulate you guys from it.
I didn't hear about
in the Ordicord.
Yeah, there's always something.
But like
what?
they're
what
fighting with each other.
Just so you're watching, everybody, all the drama you see on the Ordicord, they're protected from it.
I'm like, what are they saying? Are they talking about Casey? Or are they talking to each other?
Well,
they're talking mad smack on Casey.
Well, it's
me.
The one of the more benign ones was the Ordi incident. Whenever Ordi got listed on Binance, and Binance said, "Okay, the official Discord server for the Ordi token is the Ordicord.
Nice.
The official tokenomics for this token are ordinals.com."
Mm-hmm.
So.
Is that what your screenshot is from that you posted the other day? The one where it was like someone was like, "Is this the Discord for Ordi?" And then someone said no, and they said, "Well, then what do you guys do here?"
Yeah. That's pretty much what it's like. There are a bunch of unsung heroes. The people who I would say power the ecosystem, the people who are not Casey and Raph, the Gregs of the world, the ETSs of the world, the LIFO-FIFOs of the world, like. Those people incubate, hone their skills selflessly on the Ordicord, and then profligate those across the ecosystem. And so,
what do you think is the psychology of a Discord mod? Like maybe not totally overall, but for the Ordicord, because it's thankless work.
It is,
right? Like, what is it that you think gets people? What gets you to do it, and what like gets people into it? Why do people do it?
The same reason somebody runs a Bitcoin meetup or like a bit devs, like enthusiasm, passion, and intellectual stimulation.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was talking to Crypto9, one of the other moderators, and also he's helps out on the GitHub too.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be here this week. Actually.
I know.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I
know. They're just an enthusiastic person, kind of a nerd, got really into ordinals, somewhat technical, love helping. It's hard because you see these people, you only communicate over text. Some of these people. And but sometimes the way somebody communicates online, you can just tell they seem to be a reasonable, trustworthy person insofar as you can give them a moderate position.
Yeah.
Some people have been able to generate decent side businesses out of it. Like I look at LIFO-FIFO.
Mm-hmm.
He's built like a sniping bot, like a whole like ordinals collection, which is cool as hell. And he's built like this team. So I think that's awesome. There are some people who, as far as I'm aware, just only do tech support, like ETS on the server. Never met him, but he's been doing it all day, every day. And I don't know. We're still at the stage in Bitcoin where a lot of this stuff is just powered by enthusiasts. Maybe this is everywhere in tech, like that Jenga example of like the internet and some dude in Nebraska holding the entire infrastructure up. But I think that's kind of like.
Have there ever been any really noteworthy scams on the Ordicord?
Oh yeah, dude.
That's what he's sheltering you from.
I don't know. I actually don't even know if I want to get into that.
No, I'm curious. Like, have there been any really good ones, or a lot of people got taken?
Not something widespread. It's usually targeted and limited. Like a lot of impersonation of me and other moderators, and probably you. A lot of fake Discord links, a lot of misinformation.
The spread of misinformation on the Ordicord.
A lot of people get linked up because they're looking for a dev for this or that. So someone says I'm a dev and they take it to off-server conversation.
Where they get just fleeced.
That's a good way to target people, because if they're looking for a dev, then they're not a dev.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you like look at how like the Lazarus people up in North Korea do things, like in North
Korea, up in old North Korea.
Well, bro, I mean, like, I assume that there's Lazarus group people on every like server.
The North Koreans have fully infiltrated the Ordinals ecosystem.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I won't say it on the podcast, but there are some actually notable events of a known group of the Lazarus group having fleeced some ordinals.
Really?
No,
debt.
damn.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
God, we
that's
made
an
it.
off-camera conversation.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting. Damn.
Nothing to do with me, but I feel for some of these people because they're like good people who get taken for a ride.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's like, it seems like being a moderator for that kind of it's like just it's like constant like fighting back. Like there's no. That's why I asked about the psychology, because it just seems like, where's the relief? Like, where's the payoff?
It's just some people are like, they're GC people. They like being in GCs. They like being in online chats.
That's what
hang out in forums and stuff. And I've never really understood that. I've always wanted to kind of be a GC person, you know, I've always wanted to do that. But then I get into like some IRC channel. I mean, and I'm like, oh my God, this is fucking retarded. Like, why am I here? You know?
Yeah, I like to lurk on more forums than group chats. I definitely enjoy having like eyes on things, and I appreciate having access to these things when breaking things happen, because that's the first people that will talk about it. But the thought of having to moderate it and to like block people and, you know, hit the knuckles with the ruler sounds
I'm very non-confrontational, so this is hard for me. Luckily, there's a lot of just good people on the Ordicord who, the hands and feet, selfless people out there. And yeah, I cannot say enough good things about like most of the moderators.
Yeah, Godspeed. Thank you to the Ordicord moderators.
Yeah.
Truly
incredibly important pillars of the
community. Pick up where Casey is lacking, where he doesn't document something, which is everywhere.
The code is the documentation. All right, I wrote docs for runes.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Raph was like bugging me like forever, and I was like, you know, working the protocol, zero documentation. Raph is sweating, you know, and then I just pounded it out one day, no fucking problem.
The Ordicord mods are your documentation.
Yeah, that's right. That's
It's like how the Catholic priests preserved scripture through the Dark Ages. They're doing that, but for ordinals documentation. Yeah.
And then so after you started getting involved in ordinals and the Ordicord, you also worked at Luxer.
Yeah, I joined Luxer because I was looking for something else to do besides operating a mining company. Kind of sidebarred a lot of my obligations and responsibilities there. And because I thought it was very clear at the time, I guess I was a little bit too early, but I thought it was very clear at the time that the business of Bitcoin mining at a software level and at the block production level was going to change. There's a lot more different variables and incentives and opportunity.
Why is that? Can you like break that down for someone outside of mining?
You can really identify it by the shot across the bow of the first real 4-megger, the Taproot Wizard. Really, really cool. And it seems like a novelty, and it mostly is a novelty, but it is the most prominent out-of-band transaction, I think, ever. And it, to me, I was like, okay, what if this is a regular thing? Like, what if 4-meggers are just the beginning? This is a new type of thing which goes into blocks. This changes the game. Watching other ecosystems, I see malincentive or non-toxic MEV, and I see that as a problem for those other ecosystems, but it's also an opportunity. So I thought, well, okay, the best place to be aligned in a post-ordinals world is at the block producer level. Whether or not whatever the future looks like, there's so much opportunity there. So Luxer was an obvious direction. I knew a lot of the people over there. I had been helping on the side as a side project for the Ordicord track these inscription collections, and threw it on a site called Ordinal Hub with a buddy of mine.
Yep.
Yeah. And then he got hired by Luxer, then he hired me, and then I hired Cypher. And so the three of us did ordinal stuff for Luxer, which then kind of spiraled into like a lot of stuff for Luxer because they have a bunch of business lines. So I would flex into market research, even into a little bit of like firmware sales, even like setting up some of these like newly wealthy ordinals, degens with mining rigs. So kind of a holistic side of the business there, but with an emphasis on ordinals. But I wanted to go do something different. I think I wanted to build a more narrow type of thing at Luxer long term. And I just thought, well, I don't think I'm going to get to build that. And meanwhile, I see this guy who I've known for a long time starting this media company, and he needs someone like me to join. So
he needs yappers.
I'm a very good yapper.
Let's talk a little bit about the state of Bitcoin mining. I mean, I think it's general, but like, how would you characterize the state of Bitcoin mining right now?
It's the most divorced it's ever been from the Bitcoin culture.
And you'd expect that, right? Mining has its own set of very narrow incentives, and it really doesn't have anything to do with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you're running a mining company, mining is so volatile, you are not going to make a long-term bet on Bitcoin, right? That is a pretty bad idea, right?
You are, but you have to be crazy. You are, but I actually have the hot take that I think the best Bitcoin miners are really not that knowledgeable about Bitcoin. And the best Bitcoin miners are actually probably a little neutral or agnostic about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Because I think having too much specialty and focus on Bitcoin makes you too myopic to the actual operational requirements and the ability to like execute in the real world.
Do you mean that to mean like you overlook certain things because you're adding like an extra, well, it's Bitcoin, so it's worth XYZ. Like you're projecting, you're being too optimistic in your projections.
A lot of people spun a lot of tires uselessly trying to square this idea that you need to be that you want to outperform Bitcoin as a mining company, when I think Bitcoin mining actually fits into a different part of your portfolio, which is cash flow. And it's a cash flow business from the production of the commodity that is Bitcoin. I don't think of Bitcoin as a commodity right now, but I think from the mining standpoint, you need to think of it that you are similar to an oil producer or a gold producer. You are producing this commodity with a margin, and your competitive advantage is not in necessarily predicting the price of the commodity, but rather in your cost of production.
Right.
And the people who are
it's like you don't go up to like some dude selling bacon wrapped hot dogs on the side of the road and be like, why aren't you outperforming Bitcoin?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that because a lot of the business is optimized for more like guys out in the field who are hooking up transformers or like electricians, those people don't spend all time online reading or listening to like Bitcoin technical podcasts. So they have a really narrow understanding of like the mechanics of what Bitcoin works, like how it works. Like they throw their shit on Coinbase, on River, on Kraken, and they don't do multi-sig. They don't really know what a Bitcoin core is. They just call it Bitcoin. They don't know what a UTXO is. But they know the hash price. So like just an entirely different information ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a totally different culture. I mean, it's really, I think I've kind of like started thinking about Bitcoin more politically. Like I think we're kind of in an era now where you have all these soft fork proposals, for example, and there's kind of no clear way to get your preferred soft fork proposal through. And so you have these different kind of groups, whether it's like the miners or the core devs, or I don't know, maybe you put the node runners or the users or something like, I don't know exactly what other group would be. Yeah. But like, at least just looking at the miners versus the core devs, it's like the core devs are all talking about the soft fork proposals, right? But the miners seem like they are not paying attention at all.
I'll use the example of Mike Hamilton, Chief Research Officer at Grid, one of the smartest people I know, and one of, like, I would say top 10 ordinals devs. You might know him under the name Mutable Trees. He'll be here. If you haven't met him, you got to say hi. I asked him about what he thought about OpCat, and he was like, I don't really know anything about it. And he would be one of the smartest, most plugged in people to all the new stuff happening
in mining
at one of the more prominent companies, and he's like does not feel confident discussing it.
So it's pretty interesting because, back in the block size wars, miners were viewed as these like deeply political entities that were taking part in this like sort of broader discussion of how Bitcoin should be upgraded and what the future of Bitcoin should be. Is that over? Like, why are miners no longer political entities? Did they lose the block size war, and then all the people who thought that they could influence the future of Bitcoin just kind of gave up and went to do shitcoin stuff?
To be reductionist, yeah. I don't think that's what it's going to look like going forwards.
Yeah,
I think it's going to change. I think it's going to change, but that's what the past 5 years have been. The quiet over the battlefield after the block size war lasted a lot longer than people thought. People thought, oh, boom, boom, we've hard forked.
Yeah.
November 2017, we're good.
Yep. Yeah.
No, like it took us years to pick ourselves off the floor. And I think the industry had to kind of specialize and do mining and dev stuff and capital. And we had to have a half decade wandering in the desert of shitting money out into the crypto ecosystem. So now it can come back to Bitcoin, where I think ultimately it'll be productive. But
are you a shitcoiner at all?
Yeah, I would say.
What is, like what would you? I mean, what? I guess it makes sense if you're coming from an oil and gas perspective that you would be into mining, and so Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Like maybe you could be into a different proof of work, like cryptocurrency, but it makes
I'm
sense
a proof
that you
of
would
work.
be,
I'm a Bitcoin proof of work max.
right. Like that aspect makes sense.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, I guess so then in terms of other interests, do you dabble in other? Because I feel like you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You're basically Bitcoin only. I mean, you have the perspective,
Publicly,
as you said.
I mean, I run a Bitcoin only meetup. I'm very clear. We only
Yeah.
do this because Bitcoin's the only thing any of us want to be on the record endorsing. But privately, I touch everything. I have fun. This used to not be a thing. Like a decade ago, I was not aware of it like being taboo to touch other cryptocurrencies. I thought it was fun. I still think it's fun.
Sounded like a pre-scandal Catholic priest.
Yeah. God, you gotta choose the words more carefully. Well, I own and have owned most crypto assets, and I'm a little bit of a Dejan, but it's more intellectual curiosity, and I've been pretty good at identifying this like secular, cyclical, like crypto adoption, and then picking a few winners. And also, it's how I stay sane. Like, I don't know. I mean, you can just DCA it heads down, which is fun. That's the way you should do it. But I have to be engaged. And I also think this is long-term, unintentionally worked to my advantage because I possess the language of this new class of Bitcoin entrant who they come from these other ecosystems, and they come from proof of stake ecosystems, and I can pretty seamlessly talk about, oh yeah, I remember like minting geckos on Solana. That was really fun. Like, I like that kind of stuff. I don't think that's bad. I think it's bad if you go onto on a pedestal and say buy this shit in a really public capacity.
I was going to say, I think that there's it's depending on your audience. So like, if you're talking about internet nerds who love having fun on the computer, let them have fun on whatever chain they want to have fun on, and let them explore the boundaries of all of that, and don't shame that process. Yeah. But then I get into an Uber, and my Uber driver asks me like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I work in Bitcoin. And they're like, oh yeah, like I think
I own Tron.
I own Cosmic. That's that one's gonna go up, right? So Bitcoin's not going up as fast, right? Like, there's this whole class of people that exist not in the having fun on the computer internet nerd space that are mostly affected by the marketing budgets of those cryptocurrencies. So I think it's highly dependent. And to those people, I say, don't touch anything but Bitcoin. Like, and I'm very
those people I say, yeah, I mean, I've been this for forever, and I only tell people to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah,
that's usually like what I say.
Exactly. So I think, but that narrative of Bitcoin versus everything else is not a narrative that's known outside of crypto land. Do you know what I mean? Like, normies have no idea that Bitcoin and crypto have any sort of adversarial relationship.
Like specific, like highly segmented religious groups where like.
That's true.
Among
the Sedevacantists.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like Luke's Catholic, right? He likes the Pope, right?
Yeah. So I think I think I agree with you in the context of our Twitter sphere,
Yeah.
our online niche. Like, yeah, there's no reason to be like aggressive towards anyone who's shitcoining. Let them have their fun. It's more the, I think, public facing narrative that I would like to see more distinction between crypto and Bitcoin for normies. Because I think that's an important distinction for people to know.
Oh yeah, I try to distinguish it. I'm like, I speculate. I find a lot of the stuff intellectually stimulating. I
Mhm.
find it really interesting. But I'm agnostic about it. And I have like short-term views, short-term positions. I'm like, I don't anticipate owning this stuff in like 3 or 4 years.
Mhm.
Like,
Well, it's a hobby for you,
It's a
or
hobby.
an interest, or
It's an
whatever. Like, that's
interest.
very different than someone who's looking for a way to beat rising costs from inflation. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like
Oh,
if
yeah.
someone is like, oh, what should I put my money in because it's a good investment? I've heard cryptocurrency is good. It's like those people should just be funneled to Bitcoin, DCA, whatever you want, like whatever.
there's a
model
few
you wanna
people
do.
who I'm like, I've commanded, do not touch anything else. It will ruin you.
Yeah, exactly. I guess it's also it's like, are you like the gambling aspect of it, I guess, is like the other aspect where it's like
Oof,
you
yeah.
can say, you could be morally neutral on that, or you could have strong opinions, and there's probably some people who can gamble for fun, and it's like they should, like, there's no shame in that, right? Like, obviously gambling's a huge industry and people love to gamble. Should you recommend gambling to the general public? Probably not.
No.
Right? So I think there's
Yeah.
also a little bit of nuance there where it's like Bitcoin would be the only one that I would recommend anyone buy. Can people make money gambling on other things? Of course.
I think it's
So-
I would say it's like stock trading. Like,
Yeah.
most, stocks are going to go up, and a lot of people can reliably make money. You can have a competitive edge. I don't think most people should actively trade stocks. Like, that's just a crazy thing to do.
Right.
Most people should just index fund and get out of the way, or whatever.
Yeah. So buy your Bitcoin ETFs. That's what I'm saying.
Oh God.
I want to go back to mining a little bit though. We have all these, sort of soft fork proposals floating around. OpCat, Great Script Restoration, OpCTV, OpVault, any Prevout, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What do miners think, if anything, right now about these soft fork proposals?
They don't.
They don't.
I'm gonna broad strokes. They don't even know about these.
Yeah, interesting.
They may have heard a little bit about OpCat because of the wizards,
Mm-hmm.
but even the C-suite at a lot of these public mining companies have virtually no familiarity with this. They don't really know what an opcode is.
Mm-hmm.
They probably have incorrect understandings of what a soft fork is. And these are public companies, so now it's much more complex about what they can actually think.
Yeah, right.
Because they have fiduciary obligations.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, not a lot of people have. Miners pretty clueless still.
So why is there, chatter on Twitter about like, oh, miners want OpCat? Is that just 100% just made up?
Because miners are neutral both ways. Like, we also want fees. So if you guarantee us that it's gonna generate fees, we will probably be for it. I think in my career, which really 2017 to date, there's only been one soft fork.
Mm-hmm.
And
which was Taproot.
Yeah, and that really didn't have while it did have miner signaling, I would say even then, you just had pool signaling. Like, most miners still probably didn't know what was happening. They were just like, oh, the devs think that's what we're doing. Okay, sure.
Are pools these days more political entities than miners? Like, would you describe pools as political entities who have opinions on soft forks?
Not really.
Okay.
Pools. Oh gosh, this is actually a hard question to answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think pools might almost think of themselves. They're not in the business of trying to make those decisions. I think the decision makers at these pools try to pay attention and try to see what their clients want. And try not to do anything too crazy to rock the boat. I actually think this is probably an issue because I think more of the economic participants of Bitcoin should have an opinion on this.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're in the a major stakeholder of one of the major components of Bitcoin consensus. But in my experience, this is not really a thing.
Interesting.
How do you think it will progress over time? Like, do you think that going back to what I said before about like thinking about the different like entity, like, you know, you could even think about like the branches of government, right?
Yeah, I kind of think about that. Yeah,
that's the way that I think about it. And it just to me seems like the three branches of government, maybe that's like, yeah, the devs, the miners, and then like economic interests or whatever, node runners, like that they have not figured out the rules between each other, like the checks and balances system. There is a checks and balances system that exists like naturally within Bitcoin for those entities. But in terms of the more propaganda, nuanced aspects, they have not figured out those relationships. Like someone can go on Twitter and say miners want opcat, and that influences one wing to think, oh, miners want opcat. But is that true? Does that have to be true? Like, you know what I mean? There's this communication breakdown. This is the Tapper Wizard's gamble. This is the gamble, which is, well, we think we can shock the ecosystem into doing it. We genuinely think it's good. There's a lot of people who want to back this idea, and I think that's a really compelling way to do it. Udi is totally right when he says the next soft fork will not look like the last one. For sure. They'll all look different because it's an evolving consensus machine. I wish I talk about it, but I feel like we wandered the desert for several years, where Bitcoin became less actually intellectual and more macro bros and like meat eater bros, which is fine, I guess, but that's not what I got into Bitcoin for. It's more about like the morality of long-termism or conservatism, like positioning Bitcoin as being a conservative thing. And then sort of, I'm not like, you know, I don't think it really makes sense either, but it's instead of positioning it as this like internet money technology thing. It has not felt cypherpunk. Yeah, that's what I would say. It's not felt cypherpunk in my experience. Maybe I don't know if you're more connected. You've always been more connected to the dev side of Bitcoin, but devs are just still doing their thing. You know? One interesting thing is that, like, okay, miners were very political during the block size wars, and we all had a lot of PSBT. Yeah, PSBT. Post-traumatic PTSD. We had a lot of PTSD post-block size wars. And then we had the Taproot soft fork, which just went fine. It was sort of a, you know, devs and users wanted it, and miners just signaled for it pretty quickly, and then it happened. And now we're all sort of wondering, well, what are future soft forks going to look like? And from your point of view, it sounds like miners and pools are still not super political. And it actually makes me think like maybe the politicization of SegWit really was an anomaly due to ASIC boost. For people who don't remember, the further out we get from that, the more like drive. I think that's like 60 to 80% of why we had the blocks. Yeah. Let me just, for people who don't know, context for those. ASIC boost was a way that you could design your Bitcoin mining ASICs to perform hashing a candidate block header slightly faster. Basically, it was a way that as long as like the first half of the block header didn't change, you could perform your hashes like slightly faster. Do you remember it was like 20% something? It was not public ever, but it was a material competitive advantage for the largest manufacturer of ASICs. Yep. Bitmain, who SegWit would break that. Yep. And so there's a decent theory, which to me seems more and more plausible the more that miners continue to sort of stay out of Bitcoin politics, that the only reason that they objected to SegWit was because it would break so-called covert ASIC boost in a way that was undetectable, because it required that you
change things in part of the block header, which would cause you to not be able to reuse this like little bit of like hashing where
So
each
they
time you do
had
hash.
pre-SegWit, they had a secret edge up.
They had a secret edge up that SegWit was going to break, and they saw the SegWit proposal, and all of a sudden the miners were like, oh, this is bad, this is going to break ASIC boost. We can't say, oh, this is bad, this is going to break ASIC boost. And so then they opposed it like super loudly and made up all this like nonsense reasons.
Propaganda.
Like, yeah.
And you had the New York agreement where you got like 80 to 90% of the hash rate in the same, conference room in New York. And it's funny because today I look at that and I'm like, oh, that's not that hard. You get like 3 people.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So yeah, so maybe miners are just actually going to stay out of Bitcoin politics. Like they had a reason to care back in the day. They don't have a reason to care now. They're just sort of like service providers. Obviously, I mean, what I mean is that they might be captured in like they might, if you're really want some soft fork, you might lobby miners to get on your side, but they won't intrinsically have a side that they're going to
I would say
get on.
This is generally true. If you were able to get one major pool of over 8% hash rate or 8% of blocks to signal for opcat, you'd probably see a cascade of pools signaling for it. If you got Foundry to do it, everybody would be like, oh, Foundry's doing it, sure, we'll signal. I think miners are not afraid to be political. They're just like neutral. They're not, nobody wants to like make the first move. But if like you're like, oh, those people are for it, sure, we'll do it too.
Yep.
I think that's probably where we're at. So it's incumbent upon the Udis of the world to say to get the buy-in from one of these like first movers. And then I think it could happen pretty quickly. So
it's sort of unfortunate that the way to get a nuanced technical proposal passed is to get buy-in from like the least qualified ecosystem participants to have an opinion on it.
Well,
it kind of reminds you of the government. Like, I don't know. It's just I think we reinvent the wheel over and over and over again.
But it would require economic nodes to participate, and I think that's maybe where a software could look different. Where, like, well, you'd also have to signal for you have the activation client, I guess.
Yeah, I miss the old soft forks. I really just want Peter Willa and Greg Maxwell to like tell us what to do.
You want a dictator?
Yeah, I just want Andrew Polstra to come out and like stroke his long hair and his beard now, and be like, well, and then that was nice. I mean, obviously there were like technical nuances, but and these people who participated in soft forks, like pushing soft forks through before, I understand why they don't want to continue to do it. I understand why there are some downsides, but having influential people who are smart and who have good opinions is a great way to get things done, in a, I wouldn't say quickly. Those things didn't happen quickly. Nothing happens quickly, but it's a big contrast to where we are now. We're sort of adrift, and we have Udi on Twitter being like, miners want opcat, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I think I prefer the previous way that we did things.
There's a power vacuum, maybe.
I think I kind of like it.
I think there's pros and cons. It's like, I mean, a dictatorship is efficient. Like, that's what you're describing, essentially.
Yeah, but it's not even really.
You're like, I miss the days when the village elders would make all the decisions for us.
It's not even really a dictatorship. I mean, if those people had made bad decisions, like part of the reason that they kept their power is that they had power in the first place is because they made good technical decisions.
Yeah, it's a village elders model, maybe not a dictatorship.
Yeah.
But we've expanded the village. I think that's part of it too.
Oh, have we? The village is big now. There's a lot of villagers. Unfortunately, the occupation that expanded the most is village idiot. We've got some redundancies there, but yeah.
We should. I don't know what time we're at this point.
We're
probably
like 0 minutes.
Okay, because I feel like something we can wrap it up soon, but something that always confounds me about you, Charlie, is that you're simultaneously the most optimistic and the most pessimistic person about Bitcoin that I know. Like you are, if you were truly as pessimistic as sometimes you represent yourself, or sometimes it seems that you are, then I wouldn't expect you to then look into the nuances and details of every new thing that's coming up and be so excited about them, right? So it's like you have this like extremely optimistic, excited perspective, while also it's like I feel like I can get you in a certain conversation or a certain mood, and it's like maybe we should
try being
into dark
married to
territory.
me by my look. I mean, in my own personal life, this is how I kind of am. I'm an exuberant, outgoing personality, but damn, bro, it's like hard sometimes not to just be black-pilled all the time. So I choose to be optimistic. I can't help but be optimistic. My view of Bitcoin, I'm always like curious, and I'm hungry for new information and perspectives. So I feel this compulsion that I just don't understand it at all, even though I've been in this and like singularly thought about Bitcoin for over a decade now.
So it's you're seeking understanding and knowledge. Is that what inspires you?
Yeah, and I like to be the guy who disseminates that knowledge and be like, I've thought a lot about this. Here's what I've discovered so far. And it's not fun to discover some things about Bitcoin. There's a lot of stuff that I assumed about how Bitcoin worked that is just not true. There's a lot of things that I felt a lot more confident about Bitcoin maybe 4 years ago. But I feel like Matt Corallo made a very doomer prediction on like, he thinks Bitcoin has a less than 5% chance of succeeding. I'm like, no, bro, like that's way too doomer. But I think it's important that we have some people who are very, very concerned about Bitcoin being in peril, because very quickly it can become not decentralized. It can turn into something which is the antithesis of what Satoshi.
What are the biggest threats to
I was going
Bitcoin?
to say, what defines success, like by Matt Corallo's standards?
By my standards.
What are the threats and what is a success or a failure?
I want Bitcoin to separate money from state. I want Bitcoin to be accessible to everyone. I would start there. And the details after that, I'm not entirely sure.
That's pretty good
I would
tenets.
like for everyone to be able to self-custody if they have the option. But that's a very deep topic.
And what are the threats to Bitcoin?
The short-term ones is there's not enough competent, widespread Bitcoin developers. The supply chain on the mining side is very narrow at certain points. The chip and foundry production, silicone, and ASIC manufacturing. And then recently there's been public research on what appears to be a centralization of block production, or much fewer block producers, very fewer pools than we publicly.
So much more mining
acknowledge.
Centralization than we realize.
Yeah. So those are the three ones which kind of burn at my mind. I think those are also actually, some of those are downstream of, I think, Bitcoin culture. We like to LARP that we're adversarial thinkers, but in my own experience, I don't think we are.
Yeah.
And I think my biggest criticism to Bitcoiners is that they're adversarial thinkers in like 2 dimensions, but there's many more dimensions that you need to be adversarial in. So,
what about MEV? You worried about MEV?
Not long term. I'm more excited by it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because I think there's a lot of opportunity to be captured.
But I mean, like, what about, MEV is currently just like ass fucking Ethereum, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you're not worried about that on Bitcoin.
Well, I'm a little worried about it, yeah. Yeah, I'm worried about it. But I'm surprised how few people think it's going to happen. And I'm fine having this sparring approach, because I'll take the position that I think I'm long MEV over the next few years. I think it's gonna only increase. But I don't think it'll be that toxic or destructive. And I think it can be mitigated so that it doesn't cause pervasive issues across Bitcoin, just because Bitcoin is better designed. It's not designed like Ethereum or these other, app computer blockchains. It's simpler, which is awesome. So, I also just hope that we would look at how MEVs played out on these other chains and not try to just do the same thing they've done, because that seems crazy to me. Yeah.
So you're like MEV season 2.
I think I've toyed around saying I'm an MEV accelerationist, but that seems like that's playing with fire, I think. It's just very interesting to me, and it presents a financial opportunity. I'm in a media now, so I'm not actively thinking about how I could do things like that. But like, tell me that sniping ordinals is not fun. It's toxic to the ecosystem, but it's kind of crazy to think about that you can do this on Bitcoin now.
It's that in particular is fine though, in terms of MEV, right?
Yeah.
It's not what would be termed Meevil. I fucking hate that term Meevil. I just think it sounds stupid. But it is like, miners just people snipe. Sucks if you don't get your inscription. But the miners just sit back and collect fees like they always did. And everybody
it's driven fees like crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, it's sometimes during some days it's been like 10 to 20% of all fees on Bitcoin.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is sniping?
Yeah, there were a couple days last spring where it was like there were a few blocks. I'm like, wow, half the block reward is like sniping.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it's I mean, I think it's something, I don't know, it's a distinction that maybe people aren't really aware of, that not all MEV is bad MEV. And the reason that,
Hashtag not all MEV.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, like ordering transactions by fee rate, you could classify as MEV because it was originally a first seen rule.
Right. Yeah. So, in particular, what's neutral MEV, what's bad MEV? So neutral MEV, you can classify sniping ordinals transactions as MEV, right? This is sort of this excess value that's available above just, getting mining blocks and getting the transaction fees. However, the people who are sniping ordinal transactions are going to be competing with each other, and you should expect them each time they snipe and resnipe and resnipe and resnipe, they're going to be bumping fees so they can RBF these transactions into the blockchain. And so the ultimate net effect of this on miners is nothing, that miners just need to sit back and they will get more transaction fees in a block as these snipers outbid each other, right? And so that doesn't change the economies of scale of mining.
Yeah.
The mining economics unchanged. Now, bad MEV would be something like if we had a DEX on Bitcoin, and it wasn't just the case that people could like snipe each other to try to get more money off of this DEX. If miners were in a unique position through their ability to order transactions to capture this MEV, then they have to put in all this capital, put in all this research, hire employees. And then they have like a large fixed cost to capture this MEV, which means that if you come along and you just plug in your mining rigs and you try to mine, you're going to make much less money than them because you don't have this capital. And then there's this pressure for miners to centralize, to join together, because you only need to do this extra research, extra capital once for your one mining operation. And I do take that argument like seriously. And it is a knock against OpCat that like maybe you can build a DEX on Bitcoin that would enable such MEV.
Yeah. I think that's possible with OpCat. I don't know definitively, but they're researching it.
Yeah.
I would say MEV is bad if a user cannot reliably know what the fee rate to get into a block is. And if they can't send a transaction on Bitcoin without participating in like these MEV constructs.
Okay.
So if it
that's interesting, right? If you can't estimate the fee to get into a block from the public mempool activity, because a lot of block space would be consumed by weird games that people are playing outside of the public mempool.
So you should, as a node which pops on the network, syncs the chain from your peer nodes, see what the prevailing fee rate is, and calculate a fee to get into a block. You should be able to send that transaction. If that reality, if Bitcoin does not serve that, then I think the MEV incentive is too bad. A lot can happen before that becomes a thing. You can have a whole private to gray to semi-private mempool scenario. You can have people selling forward block space to be delivered at a certain time. You can have back-end deals to like front-run BRC20 and runes mints. You can have all that. That's all MEV, which is probably extractive, but some of it helps smooth the block producer's revenue and the miner's revenue. It just, when it bumps up against the actual purpose of the Bitcoin network, which is to allow people to communicate transaction activity back and forth, that's when it's bad. On Ethereum, that is the reality.
Yep.
It's not the reality on Bitcoin. I don't think that will happen on Bitcoin, but it's important that we be aware of the like threat vectors that could emerge. But I think right now, the types of MEV activity that I talked about, physical delivered block space in the future. I'll sell you a block in 10 days. Like, that's an important financial instrument to smooth mining revenue. Will somebody ever do that? I think it's a little ways out, but I think that is an important mechanism to have a much more sophisticated mining revenue environment. And I don't think that fundamentally challenges a user of Bitcoin. And that's a huge market opportunity for someone who wants to build that type of thing. So, yeah, imagine if Fidelity wants to open up 1 billion Lightning channels and they need to hedge their fee rates over a duration. You can do a deal with one of these mining pools to sell X number of blocks, X number of block space. You can lock in a certain cost of opening channels. You got to do a bunch of financial, backflips to get there, but that's a possibility. That's MEV. So I might be rambling a bit, but
no, I like your perspective. It's giving me a lot to process.
Yeah.
Maybe I should listen to your podcast.
I try to leave my opinions off of those. I typically try to mirror a guest when I talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say you should listen to the Gwart podcast. He's probably, I think, one of the best, broader crypto podcasts that exists, and we have it under block space. And he asks very, very good pointed questions to important people in the broader crypto ecosystem. And he's almost always pointing to Bitcoin. It's so fascinating. Highly recommend it.
Maybe you need a special edition CB Spears Off the Rails sort of maybe you're at the DJ booth and you're kind of creating weird ambiance and vibes, and you're in a darkly lit room, you have monster voice settings on, and you're going down the rabbit hole.
CBAC Spears, where my BAC has to be. I don't know.
Yeah. Because I think it is. You obviously have interesting opinions and perspectives on these things too. So it's
and they change. So the stuff I say here is just
you can't hold him to it. He means
off
nothing.
The record. I think one of the questions, we're doing this panel tomorrow on Bitcoin Core with me and Casey and some other people, and we all want Bitcoin to succeed, right? I want to at least set that foundation. So from that perspective, we can have a productive conversation. I don't know if you have those shared interests in other blockchains. I don't think on most of the blockchains, I don't think people actually care that much about that particular blockchain.
Right.
Sure.
It's all short.
Yeah.
It's short term.
Yeah.
Right. If they get out in
Chain
a
agnostic.
year, they're all good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I care. Bitcoin goes to zero. I'm going to zero with it. I've kind of tied myself to the mast.
I know.
Yeah.
It was this weird realization when I realized that, but men used to go to war. It's not the worst thing ever to die for a cause.
Oh, you're making me nervous. Can you give me another 50 years so I can die an old man?
Yeah. We
Saving
can draw it
Private
out.
Ryan or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. We should probably wrap it.
Yep. Sounds good.
This is a great episode. Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks, man.
It's great to finally have you on the pod.
Full circle.
Full circle moment. We've got Inscribing Nashville tomorrow. By the time this episode is out, that will already be. You'll probably have 5 episodes from that posted before we even manage to get this episode out realistically. So, we've got a full day tomorrow. Sold out. So it'll be a full house. Lots of good panels. Lots of good content. What do you have to shill? What do you have to plug? We've already talked about stuff.
Blockspace.
Give us a call to action.
We will be announcing a conference, opnext, opnext.dev. Pay attention to all Blockspace socials and our podcasts. I think we are the cool media company of this cycle. And I would love to have Hell Money under as
That's his call to action.
Awesome.
Love it. All right. Thanks, everyone.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.